Vishnupad Paramahansa Padavacharya Stota Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Bibiti Founder Charya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Padavacharya Stota Divine Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Ananta Guri Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Hajadas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shamakunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Navadip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Tulasi Devi Maharani Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Harinam Sankirtana Ki Jai. Rihat Madanga Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Garanga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd Canto, 8th chapter, text number 7. Yad adhutu mato brahman. Yad adhatu mato brahman. Dehadambosya datubi. Dehadambosya datubi. Yadrichchaya hetunava. Yadrichchaya hetunava. Bhavanto janate yata. Bhavanto janate yata. Yad adhatu mato brahman. Dehadambosya datubi. Yadrichchaya hetunava. Bhavanto janate yata. Mataji's. Yat as it is, adhatumataha, without being materially constituted. Brahman, O learned Brahmana. Deha, the material body. Arambaha, the beginning of. Asya, of the living being. Dat to be, by matter. Yadritchaya, without cause. Accidental. Hetuna, due to some cause. Ba, either. Bhavanta, your good self. Janate, as you may know it. Yata, so you inform me. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. O learned Brahmana, this is Maharaj Prickett speaking, by the way. O learned Brahmana, the transcendental spirit soul is different from the material body. Does he acquire the body accidentally or by some cause? Will you kindly explain this, for it is known to you. Purport. Maharaj Prickett, being a typical devotee, is not only satisfied by confirming the importance of hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam from the representative of Brahmaji by disciplic succession, but he is still more anxious to establish the philosophical basis of Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam is the science of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and as such, all questions that may arise in the mind of a serious student must be cleared by the statements of the authority. A person on the path of devotional service may inquire from his spiritual master all about the spiritual position of God and the living beings. From the Bhagavad Gita, as well as from the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is known that qualitatively the Lord and the living beings are one. The living being in the conditioned state of material existence is subjected to many transmigrations by continuous changing of the material body. But what are the causes of the material embodiment of the part and parcel of the Lord? Maharaj Prickett inquires about this very important matter for the benefit of all classes of candidates on the path of self-realization and devotional service to the Lord. Indirectly, it is confirmed that the Supreme Being, the Lord, makes no such material changes of the body. He is spiritually whole, with no difference between his body and his soul, unlike the conditioned soul. The liberated living beings who associate with the Lord in person are also exactly like the Lord. Only the conditioned souls awaiting liberation are subject to change of bodies. How was the process first begun? In the process of devotional service, the first step is to take shelter of the spiritual master and then inquire from the spiritual master all about the process. This inquiry is essential for immunity to all kinds of offenses on the path of devotional service. Even if one is fixed in devotional service like Maharaj Prickett, he must still inquire from the realized spiritual master all about this. In other words, the spiritual master must also be well versed and learned so that he may be able to answer all these inquiries from the devotees. Thus, one who is not well versed in the authorized scriptures and not able to answer all such relevant inquiries should not pose as a spiritual master for the matter of material gain. It is illegal to become a spiritual master if one is unable to deliver the disciple. Om Agina Tamiram Dasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshudun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. So Srila Prabhupada says here in the purport that the first step is to take shelter of a spiritual master, and then one has to inquire from the spiritual master all about the process. This inquiry is essential, etc. And earlier in the purport, Prabhupada says that all such questions that may arise in the mind of a serious student must be cleared by the statements of the authority. So in this class, we're going to, if we have time, we're going to try to talk about proper application of Varnashram Dharma. Should women be gurus within ISKCON? Is the Ritvic philosophy bona fide? And there's one other one. Can chocolate be offered to the deities? No, don't worry. We're just going to stick to what's here. So this is the first of a series of questions that Maharaj Parikshit asks Sukadeva Goswami, and it's a whole bunch of them actually. And Prabhupada, and his question gets answered in the first text of the next chapter, 291. And I'll just jump ahead to that just to read you the... And Prabhupada gave a class on this verse in Japan, Tokyo, Japan, September 12, 1972. But this is Sukadeva Goswami's answer to Maharaj Parikshit. He says, O King, unless one is influenced by the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there is no meaning to the relationship of the pure soul and pure consciousness with the material body. That relationship is just like a dreamer's seeing his own body working. And he elaborates on that. But the gist of it is that he's asking the cause. Does he acquire the body accidentally or by some cause? Well, the answer is it's by some cause. And Prabhupada explains in the lecture he gave in Tokyo, Japan, September 12, 1972, that the cause was that the living entity, who he clearly states was originally in the spiritual world, wants to be like Krishna. So Krishna makes an arrangement, he creates an illusion so that that living entity can, fulfill that desire, have the opportunity to experience being like Krishna. And and that's the cause. That's the cause of getting the material body in the first place, and that's the cause of the repeated birth and death. For as long as the living entity has that desire that he wants to imitate or be like Krishna, then he has to initially come into the material world, accept the material body, and repeatedly get material bodies until he becomes free from that. And the illusion's a powerful one. It's a very powerful... We're not going to talk a lot about that in this class here because it's something that is also a controversial subject, the fall, the jiva, and so forth and so on. And something that only really one properly understands when one becomes advanced, but we'll probably focus on this class about things we could do to become advanced as opposed to what we'll understand when we're advanced. But Prabhupada gives some interesting analogies in that class he gave. He gave one example he gave was when you look at the moon and it's a cloudy day or a cloudy morning and it's windy, and you see that if you're looking up at the moon, it looks like the moon is racing through the sky. If you look at it, I've experienced that. But actually, the moon is nothing to do with those clouds. Those clouds are just about not even a mile above the Earth's surface. I don't know. I can't remember from high school. I learned about at what height all the different clouds are, but they're not that very high. But the moon is, according to science anyway, it's 250,000, 250,000 miles away. So it's an illusion. In other words, that moon's not moving. The moon's just like there, and the clouds are moving. But when you look at it, it looks like the moon's racing through the sky. So in the same way, we have this illusion that we are these bodies, that this is who we really are. And it's really a very convincing illusion. But it's just that. It's just an illusion. Krishna in the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which I don't have, there's a verse where it mentions how Krishna is the supreme magician. Okay? So magicians, they're one of the things, they can create an illusion. If you've ever seen a magic show, sometimes magicians can do something like saw somebody in half, but that one's kind of like people know some of the tricks they use for that. But you might see a magician do something like somebody's sitting there playing the piano, and the magician can get the person to come off the ground, and then he takes something and puts it. I mean, they do incredible things, and everybody's going like, "Whoa!" So, Krishna is the supreme magician, and he's created this illusion so that we're really thinking, this is what's going on. Prabhupada explains that actually we're just really in the spiritual world, but we're just like dreaming that this is, who we really are. Anyway, so the way to come out of it, I know, as I said, I don't want to get into that, but how to come out of the dream. And the way to come out of the dream is one aspect of one practice that's important in the process of coming out of the dream is hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. There's the 5 angas, was it Panchanga, of devotional service, and one of them is to hear the Srimad Bhagavatam, right? Okay, so now we're hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. We do this every day. Today we're hearing, we're in the 2nd canto, chapter 8. We're hearing Maharaj Prickett is inquiring from Sukadev Goswami. And, before that, we were hearing Narada Muni was inquiring from Lord Brahma earlier in this canto. And the canto started off, actually the first 4 chapters of this canto was Maharaj Prickett briefly just asked a couple questions to Sukadev Goswami, maybe just one question, right at the beginning of the first chapter of the 2nd canto. And Sukadev Goswami spoke for chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we heard from Sukadev Goswami for the first time, actually, in the Bhagavatam, chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4 of the 2nd canto. But previous to that, we were hearing from so many other amazing personalities. In other words, the Srimad Bhagavatam is like a smorgasbord of transcendental personalities. It's like if you go to an NBA All-Star game or an NBA playoff game. David Rudder loves when I relate everything to basketball, but you're going to see the game at its best. You see, when you go to a game like that. So in the same way, when you're reading Srimad Bhagavatam, you're experiencing the Vedic, culture, everything at its best. The topmost personalities, just like the topmost players appear in the All-Star game, or the topmost players, appear in the final round of the playoffs or whatever. The topmost personalities appear in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and we get to have their association. And we really actually are having the opportunity to get their association. There's a purport in, I'll tell us the other way around. Everybody remembers Punyatama, the devotee Punyatama? He was actually a very fired up devotee. In 1978, I was traded for Mother Tita Guna. Mother Tita Guna's Pancharat and his wife, and Mother Gunavati, who we all know. I was traded to Australia. They came. They wound up in New York, and I got sent to Australia. The other guy didn't go, and so I spent about 2 or 3 weeks in London. And each day they let me go out with a different Sankirtan devotee on Sankirtan. And by that time I'd already distributed with some of the best distributors, at least in North America, Sura Prabhu, Tripurari, Pragosh, Vaisheshika, like that, etc. Like Atma. So I'd seen, the top distributors, and Punyatama was like that. He was a fireball, like a powerful distributor and a very serious sadhaka too. He got messed up. He got tripped up when at some point here, when he came to America. But anyway, he had about a half a dozen realizations. Whenever you'd meet him on the street, he'd always share one of them with you, right? Remember? One of them was, I remember hearing this one more than once, about how when you're reading the Srimad Bhagavatam, you're getting the association of all these great personalities. Raise your hand if you heard, if Punyatma ran that one on you, the brahmacharis, people who knew would be interested. So yeah, he would always say, and he's right. He was right. He's right. And there's a purport in someplace in the first canto. I didn't get a chance to research it, but where Prabhupada says that we like to thank Narada Muni, right? Everybody remember this one? We'd like to thank Narada Muni for kindly appearing. What? 5th chapter. Do you know exactly the verse? We'd like to thank Narada Muni for kindly appearing here in the pages of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Yeah, so you could take that metaphorically, I guess, but I'd like to take it literally. That Narada Muni he's appeared in the pages of the Bhagavatam. In other words, when you read the Srimad Bhagavatam, it's not different from Krishna. There's so many verses that say that, but it's also by the inconceivable potencies of Krishna. It's not different from those personalities. You're actually getting the association of Narada Muni. You're getting the association of Vyasadeva. Actually, as part of my preparation for this class, I just went through the first canto. Because so far, as I said, in the second canto, so far we've gotten the association of Maharaj Parikshit, and he asking the questions, Sukadeva Goswami, and Lord Brahma, and Narada Muni. But in the first canto, wow, there's a whole panel of amazing personalities we're getting the association of. It's actually, the first canto begins with Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva is the person speaking in the very beginning of the first canto, first canto, chapter 1, up until... it's Vyasadeva up until I think text 6, we're hearing from the sages of Naimisharanya initially. The spokesman for the sages of Naimisharanya was Shonaka Rishi, but initially the way it's presented more than one time in the translations in the purport, we're hearing from the sages of Naimisharanya, meaning different sages might be posing the questions or like that. But then we're hearing also from, then you hear from Srila Sutta Goswami. And one thought that came to my mind when I was doing this little research project last night in preparation for the class was, we memorize a lot of the verses from the first chapter of the Bhagavatam and from the second chapter of the Bhagavatam. Those verses that Vaisheshika Prabhu was referring to yesterday about Srinvatam Svakata Krishna, that whole series of verses. It's about 4 or 5 verses. That's from the second chapter, Divinity and Divine Service. That's Sutta Goswami speaking. See? So in other words, it's not that just, Maharaj Parikshit and Sukadeva Goswami, the only two kind of important personalities in the Bhagavatam. I mean, they're all important. They're all like super transcendental devotees, and they all have like a mouthful to say. They're all making an incredible contribution, transcendental contribution to the overall awesomeness of the Bhagavatam. And, so much so that we memorize their verses. We're memorizing things that the sages of Naimisharanya asked in the first chapter, and we're memorizing the answers of Sutta Goswami in the second chapter, like that. So anyway, so far you got Vyasadeva, sages of Naimisharanya, Sutta Goswami, then Shonaka Rishi chimes in the 5th chapter. Then there's that whole interlude between Vyasadeva and Narada Muni. Actually, it starts off towards the second half of the 4th chapter with Sutta Goswami. The sages are inquiring about how did the Bhagavatam come about, and so in answer to their questions, Sutta Goswami describes to them all about Vyasadeva and what he did and how he, in the previous class I kind of went over that whole thing, but so that's all there. And then Narada Muni appears on the scene, and then Narada Muni instructs Vyasadeva in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and then he actually tells him about his own life, and so that's all there. So we're getting their association. Then in the 7th chapter, we hear more about what Vyasadeva did after he got all that instruction from Narada Muni, how he prepared himself or entered into the process of producing the Srimad Bhagavatam. Did you find it? More research is needed. Okay, it's there. And then in the 8th chapter of the Bhagavatam, we hear about, in the 7th chapter, there's also that, halfway through the 7th chapter, there's that whole pastime about the punishment of the son of Dronacharya, Ashvatthama. And then, so in the 7th chapter of the Bhagavatam, first canto, we're introduced to Arjuna, Krishna, and Draupadi in that order. Just briefly, but they may all, come in, make an appearance, and they all do say something. And then in the next chapter, we're introduced to Uttara, the wife of Abhimanyu, Queen Kunti, in her prayers. And then in the last part of the chapter, Yudhisthira comes in, and he kind of implores Krishna to stay a little bit longer. They need, in Hastinapur, like that. And then the next chapter, Bhishma Dev, this is like, the lineup of the most powerful team, or something, like boom, here's the heavy hitters coming one after the other. Bhishma Dev, who else? Vidura, Sanjaya. Then later on, of course, we also hear about Maharaj Prickett when he encounters Kali. Anyway, you get the idea. It's just like all these incredible, super transcendental personalities are giving us their association in the pages of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So Srimad Bhagavatam is an incredible book, and as I mentioned, one of the angas is to study the Srimad Bhagavatam. And I wanted to make one point on this, that, in previous ages, people had better memories, right? That's stated in the early on in the first chapter there. Prayena palyusa sabya kalinasmin yugejana. Yeah, manda sumanda mateo mandaba. Yeah. So people had better memories, and they also had more interest. So in Kali Yuga, it's quite. So the process was you just heard attentively from your spiritual master, and you would remember. But that kind of, for most of us, that doesn't work. We got to do more. It's in the Kali Yuga, you got to do more than just hear and then expect that you're going to remember. If you are able to do that, you're blessed. Congratulations, you're blessed, and we take the dust from your lotus feet. But for most of us, you got to do more than that. You got to really apply your mind more. Now, there's a reason why in schools, at least all over the United States, and I'm not sure because I haven't researched it, but I would venture to say every place in the world, there's a reason why kids at school get homework, because they need that to kind of solidify the information in their mind. And that was like you go to school and you hear something in the class, and then your teacher gives you homework, right? And the homework is not the new stuff. The homework is not about what they're going to be teaching the next day. The homework is just reviewing what they taught you that day. If I remember, at least the homework I got was of that nature. And that's, I think, pretty much standard all over the world. There's a reason for that, because people need that in order to be able to remember it. You hear it from the teacher that day in the school, and then a few hours go by and you go home and the homework is about the same thing the teacher was just teaching you about. And then if you do the homework, you answer all the questions, you write the paper, whatever you have to do, then you have a better chance of remembering it. All right? So I would like to suggest that we need to study the Bhagavatam like that, because otherwise, at least for myself, a lot of it just goes, it just goes in one ear and out the other. I mean, when I was doing this, little project research last night in preparation for the class, I joined the movement middle of April 1973. That's over 48 years ago. Okay, so I've been hearing and coming to class all the time. So you might think, oh, that was easy. You could have done that by memory, but I couldn't. I couldn't do it by memory. I wasn't, even though I've been hearing the Bhagavatam, I've been, and reading it and everything for 48 years, I wasn't able to just sit down and just, from my memory, remember, okay, yeah, first there was this person speaking, and then they spoke to that person, and then there was this. I couldn't. I had to sit down behind the computer on the database and just, do it, look at it, and then make notes and everything like that. See, so in other words, as I said, somebody with a better memory, hopefully some of you have, might be able to just do that off the top of your head. But for a lot of us, you need to study. You need to study. That's the Kali Yuga equivalent to, hearing attentively with rapt attention from the spiritual master. We want to try to do that too, but in addition, we might need to study. It's a good idea to, go back, any way it's going to work for you, but so you can get the ideas in your head. Now, somebody might think a response to that might be, well, hey, I thought I heard it said that there's no qualification. You don't have to be a scholar, you don't have to be rich, you don't have to be this. It's true. There's no material impediment. Even if you're not like a scholar, you can still become a pure devotee. But there's nothing wrong with being a scholar. It's not like you have to be. You could be illiterate, right? I mean, Gaura Das Babaji is given as an example. Of course, he wasn't really illiterate, but he didn't write very well, But the point is, it's okay. It's not like it's a bad thing. This might not be absolutely necessary. Not might. It isn't absolutely necessary. You could become a pure devotee and empowered even without reading the books. I mean, I've heard Prabhupada say that. You could just, if somebody could chant the Hare Krishna mantra without offense, they'll experience love of Godhead, which is the ultimate goal of the chanting. But, if you have that inclination, or if you have that ability and inclination, it's a good idea to use the things we're already conditioned. We're already, we all went through school, so we all had to do that. That whole thing of going and getting homework and studying. Might as well use that in Krishna service. And of course, this is not like some new brilliant idea. It's already going on. You have the Vrindavan Institute for Higher Education, Mayapur Institute for Higher Education, where they give the devotees an opportunity to systematically study the literature. That's a good idea, because it'll just help you get more absorbed in it like that. So that's a point. And as I said, and how to do it, there's already programs, mechanisms in place, programs in place for that purpose, but you can figure it out for yourself too. That's also bona fide. Now another point is, so this Srimad Bhagavatam, it's got everything going for it. The Srimad Bhagavatam. So as I mentioned, we're hearing from all these, we're getting the association of all these incredible transcendental personalities. It's if we get absorbed in it, it's going to really helps us a lot in our own spiritual life. And aside from that, it's beautiful. Look at this book. This is a beautiful book. I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but for me, just looking at this is like, I go every day, I see the Bhagavatam and I go, wow, that is beautiful. Prabhupada was really the original designer or artist of the cover. Archie did a good job of kind of getting it onto this volume that we distribute now. But, Krishna says in the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Yayatam mam papajante tam sataiva bhajamiham. As they surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. So, I noticed the pujaris, when in the morning, when it's greeting the deities, they're all they're clustered together, and I could see them all kind of standing next to each other and going like that, and they're really getting into how they, how beautiful the deities look. I don't have that. I mean, I could see, deities look beautiful, but I don't really. But when I look at the Bhagavatam, then even though it's dressed the same every day, they don't change the outfit. Same outfit. This book has been wearing the same outfit for the last 20 years now, but it's beautiful. This is a beautiful cover. I mean, even if you don't know anything about what it means or anything, it's a beautiful cover. Look at that. Okay, that's one point. Yeah. Now, aside from that, but it does mean something. This picture is not just like some, silly picture. This is a cosmology. This is a cosmological picture, and I'll explain what I mean by that. It's a picture of reality. Cosmology, the dictionary definition of the word is, it's the study of the origin and the development of the universe. And that's exactly what this picture is. This is an amazing picture. This picture is a picture that describes the origin and the development of the universe. And if you don't get it, devotees get it just by looking at it, but then there's a couple pages in, there's the explanation of the cover. Somebody could become a pure devotee just by looking at this book and reading that explanation of the cover. Well, I don't know about a pure devotee, but you can get a lot of inspiration from that. This is an amazing book. And aside from that, it's real easy to read. I mean, if I was in a situation where I got the opportunity to give one book, to some really important person, like whoever, Xi Jinping, where's this, Guranga Prem here? No. Okay, or anybody, Vladimir Putin or Joe Biden or whatever. If I had an opportunity to give some really important person one book, I definitely would give him this first, Canto Bhagavatam. This is the book I would give him. Even more so than Bhagavad Gita. It's first of all, it's a lot more beautiful. No offense, Bhagavad Gita, but it's beautiful to see, and it's got a storyline. It's an easy read. You know, you could tell them just, okay, you know, to start off with, maybe just read the translations. And it's got an interesting storyline there. So this is an amazing book. It's an amazing book Bhagavatam is amazing to study, and it's amazing to distribute. When you give somebody a Srimad Bhagavatam, when you're out there on Sankirtan, and you give somebody a Srimad Bhagavatam, you are giving them a game changer. This book is a game changer. This is a book that can change somebody's life for real, big time, you know. And we want to do that. You know, we want to do that. We want to, as much as possible, get out there and get these books out. And, you know, by the mercy of the management of this temple, we've been given, all of us, been given a great opportunity to do that. You know, like ultimately Krishna's mercy, so many different wonderful arrangements are here in New Dwarka, and we're in a position to really give Krishna consciousness to a lot of people, you know, distribute it very liberally, reach a lot of people, and people need it. I'll give you an example. This is one example, because, you know, Prabhupada said if you're cooking a pot of rice, if you just take one grain, and you can tell something about if the pot, what's going on with the pot, if it's all cooked or not. So this was just yesterday, but this is, as I said, this is just one incident of like many, many, many that I have, and I'm sure other distributors have. I was in the Target parking lot over there on La Cienega and Obama, that Target, okay? And so I approached this one lady, probably looks like she's about 40 or something like that, 45. And so I show her the books, and she wasn't interested herself, but she goes, you know what? Maybe I should take these for my son. I said, yeah, great idea, take them for your son. And then she described to me her son's situation. She said he was 23 years old, and she said since COVID began, you know, he wasn't working, so he was just sitting in his room. He said she was getting into drinking, and he was watching, and all he did was drink and watch video games. You know, so you hear that a lot. I mean, right? Sankirtan devotees, you know, there's a lot of people out there, and I bet you if I met him, he was probably a cool guy, you know, but it's just like a victim of circumstances. There's so many people out there. They really need to come in contact with Krishna consciousness and have the opportunity to, you know, to do something perfect with their lives, which is take up devotional service. So, yeah, we're reaching people like that. There's people maybe who aren't interested or just like absorbed in the dream of enjoying the material world, but there's plenty of people who aren't. There's plenty of people who are ripe. You know, and Vaisheshika in one class, he hasn't mentioned it for some years now, but he had this, his strategy was we're going out there to get the ripe fruit, you know, the ripe fruit. So that's a way not to get discouraged. Just don't worry about the people who aren't ripe yet or rotten, you know. Just you think of yourself as a fruit picker. Actually, I was a fruit picker before I joined. I lived in a kibbutz in Israel for some months, and my service was to pick grapefruit, and that's what they taught me. That's how they taught me just that. That when you used to climb up the tree, and they'd say, look, you take the thing, and if you're just going to give it a little tug, and if it comes off, that's what we want. Don't touch the ones on the ground, because you have to put them in the basket. And if it's a bit of a struggle, just leave it. Leave it. We'll get it next week. We'll get it next. Just take the ones that just come off. So it's exactly perfect strategy, you know, perfect analogy. We're just going for the ripe fruit. You know, the ones that aren't ripe, leave them on the vine, leave them on the tree to ripen up, and the ones that have already hit the ground, next lifetime, you know. So anyway, I'll stop there. Does anybody have anything they'd like to say? Thank you. Hare Krishna. Shall I? Sure.
Yeah, I wanted to share something from the Chaitanya Charitamrita in glorification of the Srimad Bhagavatam in relationship to getting a taste for chanting Hare Krishna.
Okay.
One can overcome all misconceptions and entanglement in the material world by practicing Bhakti Yoga. And therefore Vyasadeva, acting on the instruction of Sri Narada Muni, has very kindly introduced Srimad Bhagavatam to relieve the conditioned souls from the clutches of Maya. Lord Chaitanya's spiritual master instructed him, therefore, that one must read Srimad Bhagavatam regularly and with scrutiny to gradually become attached to chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Lila 773 purport.
Thank you. I was asked to say something about Vikeshwara Pandit, so very briefly. Vikeshwara Pandit is related to Aniruddha. I think he's like an expansion. If I'm wrong, correct me. An expansion of Aniruddha. He's one of the intimate associates of Lord Chaitanya, and he was famous for his dancing, among other things. Actually, he also was the person who saved Devananda Pandit, right? Yeah, Devananda Pandit was an offender, and he was saved by his association with Vikeshwara Pandit. But Vikeshwara Pandit was, among other things, famous for his dancing. On one occasion, he danced for 72 hours continuously to get the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, which he did. It's kind of like watching Devavrata dance, but 10 times, you know. But, no, yeah, okay, whatever. But yeah, so he was a very empowered, confidential devotee of Lord Chaitanya. So somebody else, you want to say something? Yeah.
Okay, when we read Srimad Bhagavatam, we have association with, this great personality. So can you maybe elaborate a little bit how it really work, this kind of association? Did they're maybe even, mystically, they're aware, about us in some sense? Or is just, they're just our role model, and we try to just follow their example? Well,
Yeah.
Can you say a little bit more about?
Well, my honest answer to that question is, I don't know. But just like I'm in this room now, and there's like, say, looks like there's about 22 dozen people in the room, okay? But you're not all the same. I know that I can make out a difference between Amala Bhakta Maharaj, Prema Sankirtan, Devarata, Satchidananda, and other, etc. So my speculation, philosophical speculation, I hope, would be that as we get, go more and more deeply into the Bhagavatam, you'll actually be able to experience the personality. Narada is a personality. He's not the same as Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva is a different personality from Vidura. Vidura is a different personality from Queen Kunti. Queen Kunti is a different personality from Draupadi, etc., etc. And as you go more and more deeply into it, you'll actually, once again, this is a philosophical spectrum, that you'll experience these personalities. Otherwise, what would it mean to get the association of that? It's more than just getting some information. I'm thinking that you get the actually experience of that personality. But once again, that would, somebody who maybe knew more could say something better about that. Yeah, another kirtan.
Okay.
And this will be the last thing, and then
I'll
we'll
just be real
stop.
quick because I think we're over time. Yeah, I like the point you were making, how we could develop a relationship with the people in the Bhagavatam. Yeah. How we can develop a relationship with the different people in the Bhagavatam. And I was thinking, when we sing the Prema Dwani prayers, Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa, we're actually glorifying so many different people. If you think about that, it's like the different acharyas, Srila Prabhupada, Bhakti Siddhanta, the 6 Goswamis, Radha Krishna, the Gopis, Radha Kund, Shamakund. We have like an infinite list of people, because then we pay obeisances to the Vaishnavas, and the Vaishnavas are unlimited. There's Vaishnavas in Vaikuntha and Dwarka and Goloka, all over this material cosmos. So we're basically paying obeisances to everyone, because everybody at heart is a devotee. Even if you're in the material world, you're covered over. So I thought that was a nice point. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, in other words, the spiritual master must also be well versed and learned so that he may be able to answer all these inquiries from the devotees. And then he was explaining how, you go to the spiritual master and you inquire, and that's how you get the answers. But even Srila Prabhupada, this is also a common phenomenon nowadays, but even when Srila Prabhupada was on the planet, he had so many disciples that never met him, even physically. They got initiation through the mail or whatever, so they may have never had the chance to ask a question. Of course, he was available, like he would answer any letters that came to him, but perhaps some people were nervous, they didn't want to bother Srila Prabhupada by their questions.
Mm-hmm.
So is it appropriate that you should go to a senior devotee for questions? And if that is appropriate,
then how do you differentiate? Because you may be inspired by different senior devotees, and you may take inspiration from their answers, but they may have different answers. They may answer your question differently. Say, I ask you, and then I ask Vaisheshika Prabhu, and then I ask like another senior devotee the same question. You guys might give good answers, but it may all be different. So then what answer am I supposed to actually like follow if I'm looking for an instruction? And I have found that some of my questions, I have some like philosophical questions that I've asked senior devotees, and I've yet to be like satisfied with like an answer. So is Krishna also available? Should we go to the deity and chant? I've heard a quote where Srila Prabhupada says, if you chant Hare Krishna, all your questions will be answered. So that's there also. So how can you?
Well, that's a big question.
Can you guide me?
I'll just say a teeny little bit in answer to that. I would say try to ask your question to somebody who is recognized as being very authorized devotee. That's one point. And the GBC might have a position on the point that you're inquiring about. Find out what that is, because that's supposed to be the official understanding that we get on certain issues. The GBC issues position papers and explaining it, like to say the fall of the jiva, something like that. So you could ask different devotees, but the most intelligent thing to do would be, what does the GBC have to say on this issue? Because they've written on it, they've expounded on it like that. And then the other thing is, read Prabhupada's books carefully, because pretty much everything's in Prabhupada's books. If we really research what we're concerned about in Prabhupada's books, we might find the answer there. And might find it's not necessary to ask this one, that one, this one, that one. And the last thing is, sometimes you just have to be patient. Sometimes you're not going to understand it until you become more advanced. You just have to take the answer that's there, and even though you're not feeling it, but it's the right answer, and when you become more advanced, you'll be able to appreciate it more. So we really have to stop there because it's late. Thank you. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Is it okay?